بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. Inshallah ta'ala, we left off on page number 10 of our text, talking about the two positions of the scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah of at-ta'wil and at-tafweed, figurative interpretation of the attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, or resigning the meaning of those attributes to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And we mentioned that the position of the majority of as-salaf was the position of leaving those meanings to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala while affirming those attributes with non-resemblance to the creation. And that the majority of al-Khalaf, those latter scholars, was the position of a ta'wil, to give them befitting figurative interpretations that befit the divine subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's recite Al-Fatiha to the soul of Imam An-Nawawi, and we'll go at the beginning of A4.3. So we at A4.3, page number 10. Start Al-Fatiha. Fatiha.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, scholars disagree about the Quranic verses and hadiths that deal with the attributes of Allah Ta'ala. Per translator, such as his yed, quote-unquote, hand, Quran, Surah 48, Ayah 10, his ayn, quote-unquote, eyes, Quran, Surah 52, Ayah 48, and his qurb, quote-unquote, nearness.
So eyes here, which is the translation of ayun, right? So ayn is the singular, ayun is the plural word. So when it says the plural, the word is ayun, right?
Ayun, excuse me, or his qurb, nearness, quote-unquote, nearness. Quran, Surah 50, Ayah 16. As to whether they should be discussed in terms of a particular figurative interpretation, ta'wil, as defined at W6 or not.
So what you notice that the reader did, may Allah bless her and reward her and raise her rank, is that she gave the original Arabic words that were mentioned in the transmitted texts or the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. She didn't just mention the translation, because some people, and they are mistaken in this, they know, but they act as though the Quran is in other languages. So they translate words that were mentioned in the Quran to other languages, and then take those words from other languages and apply them as attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this is a mistake. And we should prevent ourselves from doing that. we should recognize that the translation is the translation, but the attribute of Allah is what Allah mentioned in the original Arabic tongue, and this is an important aspect of it.
Some say that they should be figuratively interpreted as befits them, per translator interpreting his yet, quote unquote, hand, for example, as an allusion to his omnipotence. And this is the more well known of the two positions of the scholastic theologians. Others
So,
say
for
that
instance, they would take yad to mean al qudra, power. And then they would show in the Arabic language where the word yad can have the meaning of qudra, or and in verses of the Quran or hadith where that meaning is understood in the language of the Arabs, or from poetry. And then they would say, see, this is befitting to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the word yet with this meaning.
others say that such verses should not be given a definitive interpretation, but rather their meaning should not be discussed, and the knowledge of them should be consigned to Allah Ta'ala Most High, while at the same time believing in the transcendence of Allah Ta'ala Most High, and that the characteristics of created things do not apply to Him. For example, it should be said, we believe that
Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa.
the All Merciful is, quote, established in Arabic istawa, as discussed at V 1.3 on
So
the throne.
when they would recite that verse, they would recite it as Allah revealed it. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. And we believe in al-istiwa as Allah intended it, not as what comes to the mind of created individuals or human beings, right? So we believe in this attribute of al-istiwa as Allah mentioned when He said Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, and we say that istawa related to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has no resemblance to any attribute of any creation. And there is no similarity. There is no how. There is no likeness between Allah and His creation. Naam.
But we do not know the reality of the meaning of that, nor what is intended thereby, though we believe of Allah Ta'ala Most High that there is nothing whatsoever like unto Him. Quran Surah 42, Ayah 11.
And since Allah said, Laysa kamithlihi shay, there is nothing that resembles Him, there is nothing whatsoever like unto Him, then automatically there are certain things that are attributes of the creation that are negated by that statement. And the author is going to mention some. Now,
And that He is above indwelling in created things, hulul, as discussed at W7, or having the characteristics of temporal contingent existence, huduth, discussed at W8. And this
so Allah does not indwell in His creation, nor is He a created event like the creation.
And this is the path of the early Muslims, or the vast
Early
majority
Muslim
of them,
called as Salaf. As Salaf, they are the first 3 generations of this Muslim nation.
or the vast majority of them, and is the safest, for a person is not required to enter into discussions about this. When one believes in Allah Ta'ala's transcendence above created things, there is no need for debate on it, or for taking risk over what there is neither pressing necessity nor even any real call for. But
And I say to us, and this is my honest suggestion to you, do not allow anyone to put you in things that are above your level of understanding and comprehension. What is sufficient for you is to believe in what Allah revealed and what the Prophet ﷺ conveyed. Among the things that are necessarily known to be of the religion, and to clear Allah wa ta'ala from all non-befitting attributes and resemblance to created things. That is sufficient in general. As for the details, so long as one's belief is firm in that, one is not in need to learn the details unless, as Imam An-Nawawi mentioned, doubts come to one that cannot be removed except by learning those details.
But if the need arises for definitive interpretations to refute someone making unlawful innovations and the like, then the learned may supply them. And this is how we should understand what has come down to us from scholars in this field. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.
So, like in our time, we have Al-Wahhabiyya, so-called As-Salafiyya, bringing innovative ideas about the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this case, learned people or people who have learned this issue must supply valid refutations to those bad ideas in belief. And here, I know many of us find this part of it kind of troubling, but we are ordered in the Quran to enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. So when we see someone perverting in the issues of belief, we have to order what is right and forbid what is wrong. And you should do it in the best of ways. However, you cannot just let issues go. So if someone is perverting in the Islamic creed by saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in locations, whether that location is above the throne, in the heaven, above the heaven, suspended above the heaven, attributing Allah directions and bodily attributes, it is obligatory for those who know to supply the information to the common people that would protect them from those bad ideas. Is this point clear? Is this clear for everyone? Allah. And I remind you, don't go to extremes in this. What do I mean? Consider the person that you're talking to. Is this a person who is just following what they understood to be Islam and there is no malice in that? I just want to be a good Muslim, and that's what was told to me. Even if it's mistaken, I don't know that. So when you talk to me, when you relate to me, keep in mind that I'm not your enemy. I didn't learn. So you have to teach me. You have to educate me. And maybe you have to take your time to clarify things to me that I have been believing for a long time. And some of us, I know some of us, especially our elders, right, that have been Muslim for a long time, but they were just Muslims. They didn't learn details of Islamic creed or jurisprudence, or they don't know all this stuff. So when you're talking to them, keep in mind, even if they have bad ideas, that they were given to them. They didn't go chasing after bad ideas. Someone was spreading bad ideas, and there wasn't the alternative there for them to learn correctly. So when you talk to them, keep this in mind. Because sometimes the way we approach such people, as if they already know what you're talking about. And it's totally the opposite. They've never heard what you're talking about. So there are many people who, in our environments, who believe things that are totally contradictory to our Islamic belief as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and they never heard the correct belief. So when you come to them and you say to them, Allah mawjudun bila makan, Allah exists without a place. And all they heard is that Allah is over the heaven. And they heard the hadith of the slave girl, where the slave girl pointed to the heaven. And they read the translation in the Noble Quran to say Allah rose over the throne. And they see every book of hadith that has that bad translation that were printed. They don't know who Wahhabis are. They don't know what Wahhabis talking about. They don't know none of that. All they know, this was Islam, and it's not Christianity. So as we develop in our understanding with our people, we got to consider that. We have to consider it. And when we're relating to our people, we must understand that many of the things that are common knowledge for someone who learned Islam in the traditional classical way is foreign to others. So please keep that in mind. Barakallahu bikum. Now,
A 4.4. A person is not obliged to learn how to perform ablution, the prayer, and so forth until the act itself is obligatory for him.
so
As
this is called another way we call the knowledge that is a personal obligation on people. We call it ilm al-hal, right? Which means immediate knowledge, meaning that you learn the knowledge that you need to practice at that time, right? And other knowledge does not become obligatory upon you until you need it, right? So this is an important aspect. So this is another way they call it, say, Emil Hal, which is the same thing as Al Fard al Ain.
As for trade, marriage, and so forth of things not in themselves obligatory, the Imam.
Meaning they're not personal obligations because someone necessarily doesn't have to do tijara. Someone doesn't have to involve in getting married. So in and of themselves, they're not obligatory, right? So therefore, one doesn't need to know them if one is not engaging in them.
The Imam of the two sanctuaries, per Abdul Wakil Durubi, Juwaini,
Al-Imam al-Juwaini was the Sheikh of Imam al-Ghazali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu.
Ghazali, Rahimahullah, and others say that learning their means and conditions is personally obligatory for anyone who wants to do them. It,
So in other words, it is not permissible to enter into any saying or act until you know the rule of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala in it. So whenever you're going to engage in something, you must know the legal rule of it before you engage. As Imam al-Bukhari said, al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal. Knowledge must precede every statement and action.
it has also been said that one should not call this knowledge personally obligatory, but rather say it is unlawful to undertake them until one knows the conditions for their legal validity, and this expression is more accurate.
And so we should keep in mind, and every time we want to do an act, we need to know its conditions, its integrals, and its invalidators at minimum.
A 4.5. It is obligatory for one to know what is permissible and what is unlawful of food, drink, clothing, and so forth, of things one is unlikely to be able to do without, and likewise for the rulings on treatment of women if one has a wife.
Mhm.
Shafi'i and colleagues, Allah Ta'ala have mercy on them, say that fathers and mothers must teach their children what will be obligatory for them after puberty. The guardian
So
must.
after puberty, so when the child becomes what we call mumayyiz at the age of 10 years, it becomes obligatory for the guardian of that child, whether it's the parent or someone else, to teach that child the rules of the religion to prepare them for puberty.
The guardian must teach the child about purification, prayer, fasting, and so forth, and that fornication, sodomy, theft, drinking, lying, slander, and the like are unlawful, and that he acquires more responsibility at puberty and what this entails. It has been said that this education is merely recommended, but in fact it is obligatory, as the plain context, as the plain content of its scriptural basis, per translator mentioned below, shows. Just
Mhm.
as it is mandatory for a guardian to wisely manage his charge's property, this is even more important. The merely recommended is what exceeds this, such as teaching him the Quran, sacred law, etiquette, and teaching him what he needs to earn a living. The evidence for the
And this
obligation
is
of.
important, especially when we're talking about teaching our children, right? Make sure our children learn the obligatory matters of the religion. And likewise, we need to learn that. But don't raise children who don't know the rules of the religion. Make sure you spend some time, either you yourself or sending your children to a teacher that's going to teach them the rules of the religion that are obligatory. One of the problems in our time is people send their kids to Islamic schools that don't teach the kids the rules of the religion. So the children would go to Islamic school and they don't know how to pray properly. They don't know how to perform al wudu properly. They don't know what to properly believe. So don't just say, I sent my kids to Islamic school. Make sure the Islamic school has a curriculum that teaches the children what they need to learn in the religion. It's not just a daycare run by Muslims. And so the child will learn just some Quran, but none of the rules of the religion. And some of the kids would come out with blasphemous beliefs in an Islamic school. So make sure that they learn and that the curriculum is suitable for Muslim children to learn their religion.
The evidence for the obligation of teaching a young
And that's
child.
why I would strongly suggest, may Allah give us all tawfiq, to establish Islamic schools that are upon the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. In other words, in those schools, the reliable books that are from beginning level to intermediate level to advanced level is a part of the curriculum. Books that are taken with chains of narration to teachers so that the child would learn in every issue a curriculum, a sequence of books that are trustworthy and reliable, not just these books that people who didn't learn put together for children. No, they should have some recreational type of education, yes, but they should have sound, solid Islamic scholarship. They should memorize books, especially as children, so that when they get old, the curriculum of any madhab, in aqidah, in fiqh, in extras of tasawwuf, books in Arabic language, that is a part of the curriculum for them, right? Not that they just learn hit and miss, and then when they get older, they don't know the rules of the religion. Don't do that to your children. And we should strive to have these types of curriculum established in our schools or in our homes. Now,
The evidence for the obligation of teaching a young child is the word of Allah Ta'ala, mighty and majestic. O you who believe, protect yourselves and families from a fire. Quran Surah 66, Ayah 6.
so this is a command. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is men and stones. Here, the protection in this verse is mentioned by Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, which the author will mention.
Now, Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, Allah Ta'ala be well pleased with him, Mujahid and Qatada say, Qatada say it means teach them that with which they can save themselves from hell.
Meaning how to pray, how to fast, how to buy, how to sell, how to marry, how to divorce, so forth. Teach them the rules of the religion. That is how you save them. And here, I want to give us some advice. Many of us wonder, where are the youth in the masjid, the children? You should ask before that, where are the adults? If the adults are not in the masjid and made a healthy practice of attending the sessions of knowledge, the children will not be inclined to that. So you yourself need to be engaged with your children. Now,
as for knowledge of the heart, meaning familiarity with the illnesses of the heart, such as envy, pride, and the like, as discussed at books P, R, and S, Ghazali rahimahullah has said that knowledge of their definitions, causes, remedy, and treatment is personally obligatory.
Meaning, what is understood from Imam al-Ghazali's statement that tasawwuf is obligatory is just that. to learn how to remove ruinous characteristics and adorn yourself with praiseworthy ones that are sanctioned by the sacred law.
Per Abdul Wakil Durubi. And this is what Ghazali rahimahullah meant when he said that Sufism, tasawwuf, as discussed at W9, is personally obligatory for every Muslim. He did not mean that taking away tariqah and a sheikh are obligatory, but rather the elimination of unlawful inner traits, which one could conceivably accomplish through the companionship of a single, sincere brother. I was
Mhm.
told that if the morally responsible individual is endowed with a heart free of all these unlawful diseases, it suffices him, and he is not obliged to learn what will cure them. But if not safe from them, he must reflect. He can, if he can purify his heart from them without instruction, then he must purify it, just as he must shun fornication and the like without learning the evidence proving he must. But if he cannot rid himself of these unlawful traits except through learning the above mentioned knowledge, then he is personally obliged to, and Allah Ta'ala knows best.
So, at the minimum of a tasawwuf is actually learning the blameworthy characteristics that affect one's character and one's inward state and working on removing them and then replacing them with the praiseworthy characteristics. Some of us are not capable of doing that on our own. Such a person still must remove them. Therefore, they must have recourse to someone who could help them and train them in that matter. And that's where you have the spiritual path, right? Mm, which is called tariqah in tasawwuf. And that's where you would give this function to a sheikh who could guide you along the spiritual path till you remove those blameworthy characteristics and adorn yourself with the praiseworthy ones.
A 5.0 Communally
So
Obligatory
as you can
Knowledge.
see, the objective of at-tasawwuf is not to be a groupie. It's not to join a club. It's to actually purify yourself from blameworthy traits and characteristics. So if you're in a Sufi tariqah and you still have all those blameworthy characteristics and traits, the tariqah is not going to help you. You have to do the work, right? So you got this concept, everyone wants to join the Sufi group, but not do the Sufi work. Being in the group is not going to help you. You have to actually do the work. Whether you're in the group or not, you have to do the work. Is this point clear? Because you hang around the sheikh won't make you pious. It can, sometimes the gaze of the sheikh can change your state, but not all the time. You still have to work. The sheikh's rectitude is not your rectitude. You have to be an upright person. So you have to struggle with yourself and overcoming all of those blameworthy characteristics. And from the sheikh, you should learn. And that's what I say when we're in the company of Sheikh Samir, which we're all going to have that opportunity next week, inshallah, those who would come. I always say, look at his state more than you listen to his knowledge. You're going to learn a lot. But if you watch him and you pay attention to him, you'll learn much more, right? Because you're looking at a person who worked on themselves, on himself rather, to the point that he is an example for others in his manners, in his behaviors, in his dealings, in his interaction, mashallah. So if one watched and emulated, one would benefit greatly. And this, I guarantee you, if you pay attention, you will notice it. It's been like this for so long, so it's anyone who pays close attention will notice these things. Mm.
A 5.0 Communally Obligatory Knowledge.
So
Imam.
the first knowledge was fard ayn, and this is fard kifaya. This is a communal obligation, meaning if some members of the community engage in it, take care of it, the others are not responsible. Mm. But if no one does it, then everyone is sinful. Mm.
Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah. The second category per translator of sacred knowledge is what is communally obligatory, fard el-kifaya, as defined at c. 3.2, namely the attainment of those sacred sciences which people cannot do without in practicing their religion, such as
Mhm.
memorizing the Quran and Hadith, their ancillary disciplines, methodological.
Meaning the sciences that relate to the Quran and the sciences that relate to Hadith. So you have the actual Quranic text, and then you have sciences that help you understand that text. Likewise, the body of Hadith works. Then you have the sciences of Hadith that help you understand that. So someone has to learn both riwayah and diraya. Mm.
Methodological principles, sacred law, grammar, lexicology,
So usul al-fiqh and al-fiqh, the methodology of how fiqh is derived. Mm. And then the actual rules themselves.
grammar, lexicology, declension, knowledge of hadith transmitters, and of scholarly consensus, ijma, as defined at B7, and non-consensus.
Now,
A 5.2. As for learning which is not sacred knowledge but is required to sustain worldly existence, such as medicine and mathematics, it too is a communal obligation.
so
Same.
here, Islam does not teach us to neglect the world. So there are in every community people who should be responsible for engaging and learning and providing the worldly services that the community needs. So we must have doctors, we must have engineers, we must have carpenters and plumbers, and all of those things must exist, and they are part of communal obligations. So we should have people who are experts in that so that the people can live in this world uh, and fulfill the functions that Allah ordered them with in the world by way of having their needs met. Mm.
A 6.0. Recommended knowledge.
So, as Sheikh said, everyone can be a scholar. So, some people need to be professionals in other things. Mm. So,
Imam
we should never belittle the worldly sciences in the eyes of our youth. In fact, they should get both. They should learn their Islamic knowledge early, and then they should engage in a skill or a trade in a craft, especially in the African American communities where we suffer from financial support. And that, a lot of it is because secular education is not emphasized enough in our communities, which produce suitable incomes to sustain the community. Everyone in the community cannot be uh, deprived of adequate uh, occupations and careers that produce uh, suitable income for the lifestyles that we live in America. We have to develop professionals in our community, and their function is to help sustain our institutions, right? This is something that we have to work on. You know, when you see in other communities, big masajid and schools and all these things, because there are people who are doctors, lawyers, engineers, business people who sustain those communities, right? Because we're not in Islamic countries where there's religious endowments that are taken care of by the government. We are responsible for taking care of our masajid and our institutions, our schools or whatever. So we have to get the professional skill sets that allow us to earn the financial resources to maintain our institutions. This is extremely important and it's a communal obligation. And we cannot keep making the same excuse we're poor. We have to change we're poor to we're able to sustain what we have and build upon it. So put this in your mind. Push your children to also, as they learn, to be successful in their worldly uh, endeavors that are lawful, of course. Mm.
Recommended knowledge. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah. The third category is the supererogatory, as defined at C 4.2, such as in depth research into the basis of evidences and elaboration beyond the amount required by the communal obligation, or such as an ordinary Muslim learning the details of non obligatory acts of worship
Mm.
for the purpose of performing them.
And we should know them because we shouldn't be people who just perform obligations. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala said, "My servant does not draw closer to me in status with anything more beloved to me than that which I made obligatory." And then they continue to draw close in status by performing the optional deeds until I love them. So if we want a higher status with Allah, the status of wilaya, it's going to come from doing those optional, the supererogatory deeds. And we all need to have a weird of optional deeds of an nawafil that we do. Mm.
Though not the work of scholars in distinguishing the obligatory from the non obligatory, which is a communal obligation in respect to them. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Now, yeah.
Subjects that are not sacred knowledge. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah. Having mentioned the categories of sacred knowledge, the subjects it excludes are those that are unlawful, offensive, or permissible. A 7.2 Unlawful knowledge includes number 1, learning sorcery, as discussed at page P3. Says, according to the most reliable position, it is unlawful as the vast majority of scholars have decisively stated. 2. Philosophy, as discussed at W10. 3. Magic, Shabbadah, meaning sleight of hand, etc. Number 4, astrology, as discussed at P41. Number 5, the sciences of materialist, as discussed at W11. Number 6, and anything that is a means to create doubts, per translator, in eternal truths. Such things vary in their degree of unlawfulness.
Mhm.
A 7.3 Offensive knowledge include such things as post classical poetry, which contains romance and uselessness. A
And
7.
any knowledge that is wastage of time. As Sheikh always tell us, we don't have plenty of time to waste. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. All of us are going to die. We should be preparing for that inevitable moment, right? So don't waste your time, especially on things that will not benefit you in the hereafter. Mm.
A 7.4 Permissible knowledge includes post classical poetry, which does not contain stupidity or anything that is offensive, incites to evil, hinders from good, nor yet that which urges one to do good or helps one to do it, per translator, as the latter would be recommended.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. MashaAllah. So that sets our course in the knowledge that we need to strive to learn. It is very important in our communities as a community and as individuals that we take learning serious. And not only learning serious, but learning properly seriously, right? That we need to learn the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah well, which is the methodology that has been conveyed from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions and those who follow them in excellence up to our time. And in our communities, we need to revive traditional, true, correct Sunni Islam. and know exactly what it is, and not a remixed version that is not Sunni Islam at all, but is still being called Sunni Islam, to the point that deviant ideas are still called Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that have been rejected by scholarly consensus not to be Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. We must learn properly. And there are those who are still connected to those bad ideas. Even if they're slowly getting away from them, don't be fooled. Al-Wahhabiyya, so-called Salafiyya, are not Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. I repeat, Al-Wahhabiyya, who call themselves as Salafiyya, are not Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. One more time for good measure. Al-Wahhabiyya, who call themselves as Salafiyya, are not Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. They contradict Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in creed and in matters of practice. Don't be fooled. Learn properly so you will identify al-haq from al-batil, truth from falsehood. And the only way we're going to maneuver through all this is that we learn. We have to learn. It is extremely important. But if you don't learn, you will always be open to be misguided, to be given information that it contradicts our traditional Sunni practice. And you will not be aware because you didn't learn. So for us, let's take learning serious. Let's take studying serious. We have to know our scholars, know our books, know what they conveyed, and take advantage of the teachers we have while we have them. We are not guaranteed that we're going to have these teachers forever and you can get to it later. No. There is no guarantee I'm going to be here tomorrow. So now that you're getting the opportunity to learn, make sure you learn well. So when I go away, you still can continue properly. You've learned what to do, what not to do. Every day has to be a part of that learning process, right? Many of my teachers have died. But because when they were present, we learned, so we can convey. We're not like them, but alhamdulillah, we know enough to continue, right? So you have to be the same. It's not sufficient that you say, I got so-and-so to teach me. Okay, when you're going to become the teacher? When are you going to be able to convey like your teacher? Or something close or similar, or at least be a mirror of that, right? When are you going to be able to articulate these matters clearly and effectively? You follow what I mean? This is very important. And I pray that Allah gives us a long life, that we can share more to help sustain our knowledge development and growth. But if we don't get that time, I remind you, study hard, review, memorize, preserve, make sure you do your part. We have a lot of work to do, and it's not enough teachers at all for the work we have to do, for the massive amount of people we must educate. It's not enough of us, right? And some of us are getting old, and we're feeling it. We feel the age. We feel the years and decades of studying and traveling and working, and we feel it. Trust me, we feel it. We see it, you know? So we need to be prepared what for the replacement, right? And especially you young people, you don't have time to play games. You're 20, 30 years old, teenager, hit those books, memorize books, stop playing games, stop half doing it, be excellent. You should be walking books. These texts, we're studying them, you should be memorizing them. So it should be in our communities, those who memorize the basic texts of Reliance of the Traveler, Umdatul Salik, wa Umdatul Nasik. They should memorize these books. They should memorize At-Tahawiyah, An-Nasafiyah, Jawharatul Tawheed, all of those books, books of Imam al-Haddad and books of Imam al-Ghazali. They should have books of Hadith, books of Usul al-Fiqh, books of Ulum al-Hadith. They should be memorized. Not they still reading. They should become the books. And we should push them to that. Oh, you misunderstood. So what Sheikh Abdul Karim is mentioning is that knowledge is taken from living teachers who are a manifestation of books. He didn't mean that books have no value. No, they read books. Those living scholars teach books. But what we get in the habit of doing is reading books without teachers, and that's problematic. So that's what he intended. Not don't read Sirah. That's not what he meant. He meant don't read by yourself without living examples, without teachers to explain to you. You must have teachers. When we read books, we read them with teachers. I read what I read with you, with my teachers. And I watched them live what we taught. That's what he meant. Not that you should not read books of Sirah. How do I know? Because I know how he studied. I studied in the same way. We read books of Sirah, but we actually saw living teachers. I've read so many books of Sirah with Sheikh Samir. I'm reading books of Sirah with him right now. But I watched that Sirah living too, right? So that's what is intended. But we want to skip teachers and just go to books, and this is not how it works. You need a living teacher and a reliable book. And if you're going to do away with one, do away with the book and get a trustworthy living teacher. But you should have both. Is that clear, Sister Amira? So don't misunderstand. Books don't talk, living teachers do. When you study with us, you'll notice we read books. If you read this book on your own, you would never come up with all the stuff that I talk about. No matter how smart you are. If you read the book on your own, this just what we read, you wouldn't have come up with all the stuff I've been talking about related to the book. How did I get that? By sitting with teachers who taught us the details and explains us the exceptions, the conditions, the meanings. That comes from living teachers who learn from living teachers, who have a vast knowledge of the sacred law and its related sciences. That's a difference. It's a clear difference from someone who learned from a teacher and someone who just read books on their own. A massive difference. And you witness that all the time. So we'll stop there. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. If you can clear your schedule, I just discovered something I didn't know. Wednesday and Thursday, we may have, I just don't have the time yet because I have to take this Sheikh Samir. We may have online classes with Sheikh Samir for a great portion of the day. So maybe he'll do the morning classes and a little bit after, or sometime after work. So maybe we can get him to do twice a day. I have to talk to him and see how he's physically feeling. But Wednesday and Thursday, we may do some online lessons with Sheikh Samir, inshallah, before the event Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you can get free on Wednesdays and Thursdays, this Wednesday and Thursday, I don't have the time yet. I have to find out. Uh, uh, you will get the opportunity to have some special extra lessons with Sheikh Samir, especially for those who will not be able to make it to Atlantic City. That will be an opportunity. I just discovered that when I learned his travel schedule. I realized that there's going to be the possibility that I can bring him online with us and be dedicated just to that. But I have to talk to him. He's traveling, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him yet. But I think we've been diligent, and I can uh, basically say that he will do something, inshallah. I don't know how much, but we will do something, inshallah. So it'll be like Wednesday and Thursday, inshallah. So any questions, please ask. If not, we'll bring this session to a close. Allahu Akbar. No problem, Miss Joanne. You're the queen of the 3453. Whatever we can do. Can you explain the method of a successful dua? Praise Allah at the beginning of the dua. Make salah ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam at the beginning. Make salah ala nabi in the middle. And make salah ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam at the end. That's a successful dua. Praise Allah at the beginning. Make salah ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam at the beginning. In the middle of it, make salah ala nabi. At the end of it, conclude it with salah ala nabi. That dua will be successful. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Tayyib, barakallahu bikum. May Allah reward you all. Today is, what's today's date? Saturday. They all seem the same after a while. Tonight, Sheikh Wadeed al-Rifai will be on at 7 o'clock to continue his class. It's not Thursday, Sister Fatima. You're just as bad as me, huh? It's Saturday. Yesterday was Jumu'ah. So inshallah, we hope to see you in his class tonight. If not, inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Barakallahu bikum. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum.